This video will be concerned with performance appraisals. Performance appraisal is an employee development tool and part of the performance management process. We should look at performance appraisal in a positive light. It's enabling management to get an insight into the training that's required by employees, the support that employees need to perform their functions, and it also gives confidence to the employees that their concerns and their progress and how they self-evaluate is being flagged up to the management. Performance appraisal is also known as performance review, and it's conducted on a regular or annual basis. In fact, performance appraisal may be continuous if it's feedback from, say, a line manager who is observing the progress of an employee, or it could be on a periodic basis, perhaps conducted every 6 months or every month or every year, depending on the tasks, the organisation, depends on the employee concerned. The purpose of an appraisal is to assess development and evaluate an employee's progress. Employees should gain in confidence and in competence within the organisation. They should be more adept at performing tasks because they've had more exposure to the task and they have performed it perhaps many times in the past. Sometimes there are issues that inhibit an improvement in competence, an improvement in performance, and the appraisal is a situation where the inhibitors of performance can be flagged up, can be spoken to or spoken about with the management. So employees are able to raise issues, and also employers are able to see perhaps where training is required or supplementary guidance is required in order for the employee to meet the requirements of particular tasks. So it's a two-way communications, but it's a valuable process of communication because the employee has an opportunity to talk openly, and the employer has a way of determining what is required for increases in productivity, increases in contentment, and ways to improve motivation and loyalty to the organisation. So it's a two-way communication between the employer and the employee. The appraisal is always conducted by the line manager, who will help the employee achieve their progress targets. So by and large, the line managers should be trained adequately to perform this function. It's particularly important that the line managers enter the appraisal situation with an open mind. They should enter it with no prejudice or feelings about incidents from the past or observations they made which were perhaps quite negative in the past. It's important that the appraisal is done as objectively as possible. There should be standardized forms for the line manager to complete, and then the line manager speaks to the employee about the issues, gets honest and open feedback from the employee and records it accurately. In the next appraisal situation, perhaps in a year or in 6 months or whatever the time period is, the line manager is able to go back over the records and see what improvements have been made and what issues have been addressed and what targets have been met or in the intervening period. So it's a worthwhile experience, but both sides must enter into the spirit. Both sides must approach the appraisal with an open mind, no preconditions, no prejudices from the past, and try to honestly look at what is required, what skills, what competencies need to be developed, how can the organisation facilitate the requirements of the employee, and how can the employee further improve his or her performance and perhaps better fit in with the routines of the organisation. So it's a two-way communications. An appraisal is important for the development of employees and their future development needs in line with the organisation's strategic direction. It's important to bear in mind that the organisation has strategic goals, long-term goals that it set itself, which could be on very generic grounds. For example, to gain greater market share, or to innovate the product, or to develop certain lines of production, or whatever the strategic goals are. So whatever development that's put in place during the performance appraisal, these developments should be ultimately orientated towards the achievement of the corporate goals. There is no point in having development goals which are at variance with the corporate objectives, because the organisation will just be tearing itself apart and wasting resources. So it's important that the line managers are adequately briefed about the direction in which the organisation wishes to travel, and orientates the development of the individual during the appraisal sessions, orientates that towards the achievement of the corporate goals. In other words, all the sides are pulling in the same direction. The employees, the line managers, the senior management, all the organisation is trying to achieve the overall set of strategic goals. And to do that, that all filters down through the organisation, so that individuals working on particular functions and tasks within the organisation should be competent, and those tasks and functions will further promote the organisation in its efforts. The line manager is responsible for carrying out the appraisal task. It's important that the line manager receives appropriate training to conduct the activity. It's not just a question of getting the line manager to complete some forms. The line manager should be sensitive regarding how the appraisal is conducted. It's a situation in which there should be mutual respect. Each side should recognise what the other side is trying to do, and the employee should understand the benefits from the appraisal system and how it will help him or her enrich their job roles, and also gain training and gain wider experience, and perhaps ultimately lead them to be promoted with extra salary and extra rewards perhaps later. So it's important that the line manager is adequately briefed and ensures that the pace at which the interview is conducted, the type of information that's sought, the issues are carefully recorded. And that means the line manager should be trained to perform this function. It's not just something that's bolted on to other duties. It's something which should be taken seriously, and the line manager trained appropriately. The line manager must be able to offer support, guidance and development opportunities. The line manager should be briefed in advance as to what is available and what issues need to be addressed, what issues that's raised during the appraisal need to be addressed. It could be that the employee needs particular skills developed, and the line manager should know if there are facilities for the development of those skills. It's important that the line manager be adequately briefed and trained in the function. Now, the purpose of an appraisal. Well, to maintain employee records and achievements to date. It's important to see how individuals have developed within the work situation, to see how they've moved from one position to the next, and how they've moved upwards perhaps, how they've increased their productivity, how they're respected by their colleagues, how reliable they are, what their view of the organisation is, their loyalty to the organisation, their motivation. So it's important to keep records so that a history of the individual within the organisation is maintained. It's important to identify strengths and weaknesses also. It's important that the employee be assessed in terms of his or her strengths, what they're capable of, what their competencies are. But also look at their weaknesses. Look at what they can't do and what ideally they should be able to do, and find solutions to the weaknesses. Again, in the form perhaps of training programs or mentoring or general support within the organisation. So it's important to identify, to make explicit what the strengths of the individual are and what the weaknesses are. Assess employee development needs and their potential to grow the business. So try to understand the correspondence between developing employees' skills and the growth of the business itself. The business, after all, is made up from individuals who perform various tasks. The more productive the individuals are, the more productive the business will be. So it's a question of understanding the strengths and weaknesses of the individual, looking at development needs of the individual, trying to design courses of development which will specifically address the requirement needs, and in that way help the business to grow and to flourish. Provide constructive and positive feedback regarding employee performance. The feedback should be constructive. It should be trying to find positive aspects of what's happened, the history of the involvement of the employee in particular tasks. Look at what has gone right and also look at what's gone wrong, but offer constructive support, constructive comment, ways in which the employee can be redirected or retrained, or some remedial measure put in place to address any weakness. So it should be quite a constructive process with positive feedback to the individual. Review and facilitate training and development opportunities. It's important that the appraisal knows what training is available and what development opportunities are available. This could be in-house courses and training events, or it could be local colleges who offer courses which will be more generic but at the same time will have significant positive effects on the organisation. It could be the employee is recommended to gain a professional qualification, the Chartered Institute of Marketing or the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. There are various professional institutes that could be recommended. It could be an engineering qualification or a computer qualification. So it's important to review and facilitate training and development opportunities. Particularly the appraiser, the line manager, let's say, should be aware of various opportunities and should be able to make recommendations. Now, the benefits of an appraisal system. Well, promotion opportunities. Employees are assessed against their achievement and potential. If an employee is doing very well, has got high competencies and applies him or herself diligently to the tasks, is a good timekeeper, is highly motivated, is pleasant, a good team worker, that person may be suitable for promotion and could be earmarked for promotion, and this could come across in the appraisal system. The appraisal system could, in a sense, just delve into any residual issues, any other issues, and get an insight into the person and into their motivation and into their aspirations, and that person could eventually be promoted. It also looks at managing rewards. Employee rewards are related to their performance, Clearly, employees who work hard, who are diligent, who are committed, who want to acquire new skills and want to take on more responsibility, these individuals will be more highly rewarded. Employees who want to just go to work and put in the time and go home and are not really committed to the organisation, are not really committed to acquiring new skills, or perhaps they will earn less. And that needs to be brought out during the appraisal system. Employee development. Appropriate training policies and programs can be introduced based on employee needs. So that's a big benefit of the appraisal system, that specific skill requirements can be identified and they can be matched against the skill set of an individual. And if it's missing, if that particular skill is missing from the skill set of the individual, some remedial action can be taken. Some way of acquiring the skill can be sought. Perhaps it could be, as I said earlier, through mentoring. Perhaps an experienced member of staff will show the employee what to do and how to do it, and will give them expert opinion based on their experience, perhaps experience of working for the company for a long time. But the point is that employee development is facilitated through the appraisal system. The appraisal system picks up the information and deals with it. It's also communications. It's an effective two-way communication tool, the appraisal system. It can develop good relationships between management and employees. The employee should understand that the appraisal system is trying to determine skills, abilities, competencies, and trying to improve those. It's trying to improve them because it will improve the productivity of the business and ultimately its profitability and its security within the market. But it also improves the individual. It enriches the working life of the individual, and it gives the individual more opportunities for advancement. So there is a communication system, and both sides should understand that the communications two ways. The organisation is learning about the employee, but the employee is also learning about the organisation. It's a two-way street, and both stand to benefit from this. It engenders confidence in each other, trust, loyalty, and both should be honest with each other. There's more motivation as a consequence of all of this. Assessment of progress is a method for encouraging employees to improve. By assessing their progress, the assessor can work out what improvements have been made, what's the scale, the time scale. Was it very rapid improvement? Was it very slow and perhaps not very significant? Why is it not so good, or why is it very good? These are indicators of motivation. And what is it that determines the individual's motivation? Is it rewards, financial rewards? Is it the working life? Is it the environment? Is it security of employment? What is it that motivates the individual? Try to capture it and try to understand it, because that's how improvements to involvement can take place, by understanding the motivation of the individual and seeing what can be done to improve that motivation. Now, the appraisal system involves the following. Measurement, trying to review progress against set targets and objectives, behaviours and attitudes. Generally speaking, after the first appraisal is conducted, a record is kept of the individual's progress, the issues that the individual has confronted, the problems that he or she has confronted and how they were resolved, what training the person has undertaken, what skills they've acquired. There's a progress report. The various appraisals constitute a time path for the development of the individual. And sometimes the appraiser and the individual may set targets, say that by the next meeting the individual will have acquired certain skills, or will have enrolled on a certain course, or will be undertaking supplementary training in certain areas. And then at the following appraisal, that can be judged, it can be measured. Have they started the course? Have they attempted to acquire the skills as they said they would? What progress has been made? So it's a type of measurement. They're judging the performance. There's also feedback, providing constructive feedback and information regarding progress and future development needs. The assessor can feed back during the appraisal to the employee how well they're doing and whether they're meeting the expectations of the organisation or falling short. And if they're falling short, what can be done constructively to help them to improve? If they're already applying themselves well and meeting the expectations, then they should be congratulated for that and asked what further support they require to help them to even further develop. It's an ongoing process. There should be positive encouragement, highlighting a job well done, encouraging feedback on improvements and activities focused on adding value. Positive encouragement, identifying what they've achieved since the last appraisal, congratulating them on it and giving them positive feedback, but then going on to suggesting further improvements that can be made in the next time period. And what would they like to do? What would they like to attempt, which will further improve their productivity, their understanding of the tasks, their commitment, their motivation? What will improve their working lives? There should be open communications, as I said, encouraging two-way communications between the employee and the manager. Employees should feel confident to discuss their progress, the support they require, and their future goals. So the employees should not be intimidated by the appraisal system. They should feel confident to speak openly, to ask questions, and to see where they can go in terms of their career, in terms of what needs to be done, what courses they should do, and what is recommended by the organisation. What support can the organisation give to them in attempting to achieve these extra competencies and skills? So speak openly. It should be an open and honest exchange of ideas and thoughts and accounts of what has happened. There should be agreement. Both employee and line managers should reach a mutual agreement on the employee performance and actions needed for development. All of this should move towards some plan. During the appraisal system, a plan should be developed for the next time period, and both the employee and the line manager should agree to this. It's almost like drawing up a contract that the line manager, the appraiser, is happy with the plan that's been set out, and the employee accepts it and is happy with it as well, and thinks it is reasonable and it can be done, and there is support to do it. The organisation is behind the employee in trying to enable them to achieve that. Now, the appraisal meeting, well, an appraisal meeting usually takes place every 6 months to a year. It varies between organisations. It depends on the job, it depends on the philosophy that's undertaken by the HR department in terms of training needs and how up to date the information should be and what programs they're running. But generally speaking, 6 months or a year are normal time periods for appraisal meetings. The meeting should be an open meeting where there's two-way communications, as I said earlier. The conversation should be free-flowing, where exchange of ideas and development can be discussed. It should not be a rigid forum. employees should be able to speak freely and openly, and the appraiser should be able to ask questions, and the whole tenor of the meeting, it can run in several directions. They can pursue various points and see if it's worth developing in one direction or worth developing in a different direction, and what support the employee needs and various forms of support, and what does the employee like in terms of support, and what do they benefit most from. So it's free, it's an open chat almost between the two, but culminating in a plan that both agree to. The individual performance is reviewed against set targets, and future action plans are considered with a review date. So they have set targets. By this time next year, the employee should be able to perform additional tasks, should have extra competencies, have more skills, should be able to use equipment more proficiently. They should seek support and training in certain areas, and perhaps look towards developing interests that they have got, which are in line with the corporate objectives of the business. The importance of feedback. Well, feedback is essential for an appraisal to be effective. It builds the basis for performance improvement. Clearly, the employee needs feedback. They need to know how well they're doing. There should be some sort of benchmark against which they're compared, and it should be as objective as possible. It shouldn't be left open to the appraiser to say they're doing well or not doing well, because that is open to abuse. It's open to the prejudice of the assessor. But if it's an objective benchmark that operators within the company, employees within the company, after a year of working for the company, are expected to be able to do the following. And this is based on the history of the organisation. This is based on professional evaluation of tasks. Now, can the employee do those tasks? If they can, they've done well. That's positive feedback. If they haven't, it's a question of finding out why. What's the impediment? What stopped them? And looking for support to try and address that, so that they come up to speed and start to meet the benchmarks that are set. Feedback should be encouraging and constructive. Employees should be able to receive feedback and develop appropriate courses of action. Even when employees are not meeting the targets that they were expected to meet, perhaps it was a misunderstanding. Perhaps it was that their understanding of what was needed was different from that of the organisation. The organisation should be careful in terms of specifying what employees should and should not be able to do at certain stages. It's important that the feedback is encouraging, and that the organisation tries to facilitate the acquisition of skills and competencies, and provides time and support and knowledge to the employee who's attempting to achieve what is required of him or her. So the feedback should be encouraging and constructive, if at all possible. And in all cases, essentially, that should be the case. But sometimes, if the employee is not cooperating and is simply not making an effort, then of course the situation could be somewhat different. The most common approach is the so-called 360-degree feedback. Now, the 360-degree feedback, well, this means the line manager tries to pick up a source of information from various sources, tries to pick up information from various sources about the employee, perhaps through observations, through records of production, through attendance sheets, through attendance at meetings, contributions, suggestions that the employee have made over a period of time. So they're trying to get a perspective on the employee from various angles, from various sources, not just from one source. The system provides a better overview of employee development, skills, performance, and work relationships. This means that the employee is able to identify areas of weakness, and this is backed up by the observations, let's say, of the line manager, and then constructively support can be put into place, if possible, to address those requirements. But also it's possible to gauge the employee's motivation and their acceptance of training. Sometimes the training may be available, but the employee is not interested, and that could be a bigger issue. But by and large, this approach, the 360-degree approach, is to try and find information from various sources in various ways. The process involves gathering information about the employee from a range of sources and using the information to further support employee development. The sources of information can involve a group of employees and management completing a questionnaire regarding employees' development. It could be that periodically the management asking employees to complete some questionnaires regarding development and regarding opportunities within the organisation, regarding motivation, regarding issues that have gone wrong, as well as the ones who have gone right. Ask them for suggestions regarding improvements that can be made, not just in terms of their own development, but perhaps the working conditions which will influence their motivation, which in turn may influence whether they achieve their benchmarks or not. Other sources include performance records, reports, statistics and achievement, discussions with other managers and supervisors who are directly involved with the employee. Perhaps the appraiser needs to do some research on the employee before the appraisal meeting itself. Talk to others regarding the employee. Do it confidentially, but at the same time do it in the spirit that's going to be constructive and supportive and help the employee. It's not collecting data which is going to be used to punish the employee. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to constructively develop the employee so that he or she becomes a more valued member of the workforce. Looking at what skills, what competencies can be developed so that the employee becomes more productive and more engaged. The aim is to provide constructive feedback which will enable the manager to assess the employee's current performance level. That's the idea. So in this video we've looked at performance appraisal and looked at some of the issues involved in performance appraisal. Again, an important tool in terms of HR functions and trying to appraise how the employees see the organisation, how the employees are judged as being productive or perhaps suitable for training or for development. So it's an important source of information that feeds back to the HR department, which will influence their work and their policies in the future. But that's all we're going to deal with. Those are some of the sources that were consulted, and now I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.